Okay, so let's be honest. If you hear something isn't right, you're either in burnout, you're on the verge of it, or you're trying to recover. You're exhausted but wired, you're losing focus, you're making uncharacteristic mistakes, and you're feeling less like the leader that you once were. Here's what happens if you ignore it. Your cognitive function declines, decisions become slower, riskier, and more reactive. Your physical health suffers, insomnia, inflammation, chronic fatigue, even cardiac risks, or worse. Your career and your relationships take the hit. Burnout doesn't just affect you, it impacts everyone around you, and that includes your organization. So, what's the typical solution? Mainstream medicine offers a clinical diagnosis: depression, anxiety disorder, chronic fatigue, stress. The answer: medication. But here's what they don't tell you, that medication doesn't address the root cause. It just masks those symptoms. It can dull your cognitive edge, which is the one thing you cannot afford to lose as a leader. And worst of all, you're still stuck in the same cycle. So now, why should you listen to me? Because I don't deal in generic stress management. I deal in performance science, neuroscience, behavioral sciences, the optimization for elite sporting individuals and teams, exceptional performers and leaders for the last 20 years. So I've met you before. And why does our approach work? It works because it's rooted in evidence. We use neuroscientific, cognitive and behavioral techniques that rewire your brain for resilience and to help you develop mental toughness. It's personalized because no two burnout cases are the same, and neither are the solutions. So it follows the right sequence. We introduce the right strategies in the right order that makes the difference between temporary relief and a permanent solution. So by the end of this session, you'll know exactly why burnout happens, why the traditional methods fail, and how we rebuild leaders for long-term sustainable high performance. So now, to keep your focus on the content, I'll turn off the camera so that you can fully engage with the full presentation. Okay, let's begin. Okay, so let's get into Welcome to Breaking the Burnout Cycle. Neuroscience Solutions for Resilient Leadership. So I've already introduced myself in the pre-introduction, so let's get this presentation started, and to state that it will include real-world examples and confidentiality is paramount. So there's no specific names, they remain undisclosed, which I know that you'll understand. We've established that burnout to some degree affects us all, and this session is designed to provide you with clear science-backed strategies to break the cycle of burnout and to reclaim your energy, focus and your leadership capacity. But insight alone won't drive change. It's action that does. So if you apply the principles shared today, I guarantee you'll see measurable improvements quickly, effectively and confidentially. So let's begin. Consider this a moment. The modern leader embodying high performance leadership in the 21st century. Should we just take a moment to consider what makes an elite high performance leader in today's world? In a landscape that's defined by constant change, by rapid technological disruption and increasing global complexity, leadership is no longer just about experience, authority or technical expertise. It's about resilience, it's about adaptability and also a mindset that turns pressure into performance. So burnout, stress and decision fatigue threaten even the best executives. The modern leader must master not only business strategy and innovation, but also personal energy management and emotional intelligence so that he can thrive rather than just survive. And this is the benchmark, a leadership framework designed to help you measure where you are today, where you need to be to lead effectively, to prevent burnout and to create exceptional results. So, what are the core attributes of the modern leader? Resilience and adaptability. The best leaders don't just endure stress, they master it. They don't react, they respond. Their ability to bounce back and thrive under pressure is what sets them apart. And by using neuroscientific strategies such as cognitive reframing, controlled breathing and energy mapping, they stay mentally sharp, emotionally balanced and also decisive in high stakes situations. Another core attribute is that they are emotionally intelligent and people centric. The modern leader understands people as well as they understand business. They build trust, they communicate with influence, and they create a psychologically safe work culture that prevents burnout for themselves and for their teams. Their self-awareness and their empathy allow them to regulate stress and keep emotions from clouding their decision making. Next attribute, high-performance decision makers. Modern leaders are cognitive athletes. Their decision making must be fast, clear and strategic. They optimise their prefrontal cortex, which is the brain's executive centre. They use tools like mental priming, deliberate reflection and structured thinking frameworks. Example, first principles thinking. They don't just react to problems, they anticipate and solve them before they arise. And another attribute is that they are future oriented and growth minded. The best leaders don't just manage the present, they shape the future. They embrace lifelong learning, adaptability and innovation, and instead of clinging to traditional rigid leadership models, they adopt agile leadership principles which emphasize collaboration, decentralization and adaptability in an unpredictable world. So what are the essential leadership skills and the daily habits for the modern age? Well, strategic thinking and business acumen. Modern leaders don't just play the game, they change the rules. They use blue ocean strategies. They create or disrupt entirely new markets and opportunities. And instead of battling for scraps in overcrowded industries and markets, they master systems thinking. They see how different parts of the business interconnect for maximum efficiency and competitive advantage. They master their stress and their energy management for their sustainable success. That's because time is finite, but energy is renewable. High performance leaders don't just manage their schedules, they also manage their energy. They integrate micro recovery techniques, including strategic breaks, breath work, habit stacking, to keep cognitive fatigue at bay. And cognitive behavioural stress inoculation trains them to handle pressure before it even happens, ensuring that they stay sharp under fire. So, how about technology skills such as AI and digital fluency? The best leaders understand artificial intelligence not as a threat, but as a tool. They don't need to be coders and integrators, but they must know how to leverage AI to enhance efficiency, optimize decision making and drive digital transformation. Great leaders thrive during crisis leadership and decision making under pressure. Turbulence is inevitable. Thriving in it is a skill. Executives train their brains for crises using mental models, scenario planning and stress testing, ensuring they can navigate economic shifts, business disruptions and high pressure decisions with confidence. They are humble in servant leadership and culture building. Because true leadership isn't about power, it's about impact, and the best leaders serve first, lead second. The reason being that by fostering inclusion, trust and psychological safety, they create high performance teams that are engaged, productive and innovative. And the final skill is personal mastery and self-optimization. Because the best leaders train their bodies and their minds like elite athletes. They invest in coaching, mentorship and self-development, ensuring constant evolution and high performance. And they optimize their focus. They reduce cognitive fatigue and strengthen their mental resilience through cutting-edge neuroscientific techniques. So let's now consider what keeps them ahead. By using blue ocean strategies, they create new value instead of competing. Because competition is for the weak, innovation is for the elite. The modern leader doesn't just fight for market share, they create entirely new markets through differentiation, innovation and strategic positioning. Think of Apple, Tesla and Amazon. They didn't really compete, they reinvented entire industries. And as the saying goes, the money is in the blue oceans and not in the shark-infested red blood-spilled seas. They also demonstrate agility and digital transformation. The modern leader embraces change rather than fears it. AI, automation and digital transformation aren't optional, they're essential. This agile leadership allows businesses to respond rapidly to market shifts, customer demands and to technological disruptions. So the modern leader considers sustainable growth and ethical leadership. The best leaders don't just chase short-term profits, they build sustainable, socially responsible organisations that balance profitability with purpose. Cost cutting is too easy. Productivity and growth are harder but exponential. So the future of leadership isn't about power, it's about impact. So let's just quickly summarise the benchmark for high performance leadership. A modern high performance leader is resilient under pressure. He thrives in uncertainty. He's a strategic thinker who anticipates change before it happens. She's a decisive, emotionally intelligent leader who optimizes mental energy. An innovative, tech-savvy visionary who leverages AI and digital transformation. And a mentor, a servant leader and a culture builder who fosters high performance teams. So this is the gold standard for executives and business leaders today. This is your benchmark. This is where we're starting from. So you now have a choice. You can continue leading as you always have, or you can evolve into a modern high performance leader. And that's one who excels under pressure, drives innovation, creates lasting impact. Which leader will you choose to be? Firstly though, we should consider the journey from anxiety, stress and pressure, how it leads us to burnout. So imagine you drive in a car on a long, demanding road trip. Anxiety, stress and pressure are the red warning lights flashing on your dashboard. At first, they might flicker because anxiety appears as nervousness about deadlines. Stress feels like the constant weight of responsibility, and pressure comes from unrelenting expectations. So you tell yourself it's temporary, that you'll deal with it later. But without intervention, those warning lights grow brighter, and if you ignore them long enough and the engine fails, that's burnout. So step one, the build-up. Anxiety, stress and pressure. Because anxiety is your brain's way of preparing you for a challenge. It's triggering overthinking and hyper alertness. Stress follows, releasing adrenaline and cortisol to fuel your productivity. Add the pressure, whether from yourself or from external demands, and the load intensifies. In small doses, these responses sharpen your performance. You're ready. It helps you nail that presentation or to push through a project deadline. But when they become a permanent state, they begin to erode your resilience. Step 2, the tipping point. Because operating under chronic stress without adequate recovery is like driving with your foot on the accelerator without stopping at all to refuel. Your reserves will soon run dry. Fatigue creeps in, motivation declines, tasks that were once effortless now feel overwhelming. And this is the breaking point where burnout begins to take hold. So step 3, burnout symptoms take over, because burnout is more than just exhaustion. It's a chronic state of depletion, mentally, emotionally and physically. And symptoms include emotional detachment, where you're feeling disconnected, you're feeling numb. You've got declining performance, where even simple tasks feel impossible. You have persistent fatigue, where rest no longer restores your energy. Cynicism, a negative outlook on work and life. And the physical symptoms, I could list 100 of them, but generally headaches, tension, digestive issues, and leading on to much worse. So many leaders don't recognize burnout until it's too late, until their performance, their relationships, and their health are at risk. So diagnosing burnout accurately, it isn't just about feeling tired, and it's not formally classified as an actual medical condition, but it follows a distinct pattern which can be assessed through specific indicators such as exhaustion, deep, unrelenting fatigue that no amount of rest seems to fit or fix at all, cynicism and detachment, a growing sense of disconnection from work, colleagues, and even your personal life, inefficiency or ineffectiveness, a feeling that no matter how hard you work, it's never enough. And traditional medicine often mislabels burnout as depression or just anxiety, leading to a standard prescription of medication. But medication doesn't address the root cause, simply masks the symptoms. And the reality, burnout is a performance problem, not just a psychological one. And this is why our approach works, because we've got a speed and an accuracy of diagnosis, because we can identify burnout early before it spirals out of control. Confidentiality, it's a safe space for leaders to recover without stigma. It's a proven science-backed approach, because we don't just treat symptoms, we fix the root cause. And it's a leadership-specific strategy, addressing burnout within the reality of high-performance roles. So now, take a moment. Where do you currently sit on this continuum? Have you got it? Can you see it? Well, let's move forward. Okay, so remember, with high rewards come high risk. Leadership is a high stakes game that can lead to burnout, and often does, because leadership is relentless. Every day it's a series of high pressure decisions, unexpected challenges, constant demands that go far beyond the standard workday. But what happens when the very qualities that make you a great leader, such as resilience, determination, and an unbreakable work ethic, become the very things that drive you into burnout? Because burnout doesn't always just look like exhaustion. Sometimes it looks like a sharp, strategic thinker struggling with indecision. A leader who once thrived under pressure, suddenly doubting their abilities. a high performer operating at high speed, unable to focus. So let me introduce you to Sarah, a senior VP at a tech company I coached. Sarah's days felt like an endless sprint, pushing forward yet never winning the race. Decisions that once came easily became overwhelming hurdles. She described it as a kind of mental static. It was a fog that clouded her thinking, left her exhausted no matter how much effort she put in. So at first, she didn't recognise it as burnout. She told herself she just needed a break, or that things would ease up soon. But then the mistakes started happening, ones she would never have made before. And this session is about uncovering what Sarah and countless other high-level leaders face but rarely talk about. It's the neuroscience of burnout, what's actually happening in your brain and your body. It's the leadership burnout traps that keep you stuck in the cycle, and how to break free quickly, effectively and confidentially. And we'll explore the 4 stages of burnout. We'll dive into the science of stress, and I'm going to discuss why leadership burnout is different and more dangerous than general workplace stress. And most importantly, I'll introduce you to a solution, a combination of coaching, science-driven interventions and cutting-edge AI support designed to help you not just recover, but thrive. So if we think about 4 stages of burnout, where do you sit? Consider this as I talk. Every leader experiencing burnout fails somewhere along this continuum. We've got, firstly, number 1, approaching burnout. The cracks begin to show, but they're dismissed as just part of the job. Productivity plateaus and small mistakes start creeping in. Stage 2, where someone could be suffering from burnout now. The energy's depleted, decision making becomes foggy, even routine tasks feel monumental, like trying to run through quicksand. Another stage, managing burnout once you're in it. Proactive leaders start to rebuild. Sustainable habits are introduced, setting clear boundaries, rebalancing workload, learning to lead without self-sacrifice. And for the people that some of you will recognise here, those that have recovered from burnout, you're still not safe. Leaders redefine success. They're becoming more intentional, focused, and ultimately more effective. They don't just return to their previous level of performance, they surpass it. So take a moment. Are you still comfortable with the point you selected earlier? If so, let's move forward. So we'll just dig a little bit deeper into those 4 stages of burnout. It's the descent, the crisis, and the recovery. Let's dig deeper. Okay, so burnout doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow, grinding process. It's a descent that begins with small warning signs and ends in a full-scale breakdown if left unchecked. And what starts as an overwork schedule and a little extra pressure soon becomes crippling exhaustion. You experience loss of confidence and an overwhelming sense that something is broken beyond repair. And burnout steals your mental sharpness, your emotional stability, and then your physical health. And worst of all, it convinces you that you're the problem. So number 1, approaching burnout, where the cracks begin to show. At this stage, everything still looks fine on the surface, but beneath it, the foundation is starting to crack. You push harder, you work longer, you sacrifice more. But despite all your efforts, you're no longer moving forward. You're just running in place, treading water. And a little story from Daniel, the COO, who thought it was just hard work. Because Daniel was one of the first in the office, he was the last to leave. To everyone else, he was the gold standard of dedication. But gradually, something shifted. He started forgetting key details in meetings. He snapped at his assistant over something trivial. Tasks that were once energizing to him now felt like a burden. His quote, "I knew something was wrong when I got irrationally angry at my assistant for bringing me the wrong coffee," he admitted. And what it feels like, a fatigue that no amount of sleep seems to fix. It's a growing sense of overwhelm, like you're losing control. Irritability over small things that never used to bother you. This is the tipping point. And if the warning signs are ignored, you move to the next stage, the point of no return. So second up is suffering from burnout, the breaking point. This is where burnout takes over completely and the fallout spreads across every aspect of your life. It's your body, it's your mind, it's your emotions. They've all hit their limits. Your brain feels foggy, your emotions feel flat or chaotic. The work you once cared about now feels pretty pointless. Little story from Rachel, senior manager who lost herself in burnout. Rachel never stopped working. It was emails at midnight, it was work on the weekends. She thought she was keeping up until one day she wasn't. She started making those mistakes, but now they're serious ones. She'd sit in front of her computer, unable to start tasks she once did effortlessly. She's procrastinating. By the time she got home, she had nothing left to give, not even to her kids. It wasn't just work I was failing at, it was life, she quotes. But what's it feel like? Emotional exhaustion and detachment, because you stop caring because it hurts too much to try. There's a sense of hopelessness. Why bother when nothing changes? The physical symptoms, like I mentioned earlier, headaches, chest tightness, insomnia that leaves you drained before the day even begins. And burnout at this level is devastating. It doesn't just dull your performance, it destroys your passion, your creativity and your sense of self. You don't need a vacation, you need a full system reset. And another stage is managing burnout, taking control before it takes you. At this stage, leaders finally acknowledge the damage and begin the work of rebuilding. But recovery isn't just about feeling better, it's about preventing relapse. The story from Peter, the CFO, changed the rules. After suffering through burnout, Peter made a decision he wasn't going back. He implemented non-negotiables, no meetings after 6 p.m, no weekend work. He started to delegate more. He trusted his team instead of micromanaging them. He built in recovery habits such as exercise, mindfulness, reflection. His quote, "Burnout taught me I can't pour from an empty cup." But what does it look like? Setting clear boundaries to protect your time, energy and focus. Delegating without guilt by empowering others instead of carrying it all alone. Developing resilience habits like structured downtime, meditation and exercise. Because this stage isn't just about surviving burnout, it's about making sure it never happens again. And a fourth stage to consider is where you've recovered from burnout, the transformation. And this is where everything changes. Because leaders who recover don't just go back to their own ways, because they know the old ways, that version of leadership was unsustainable. Instead, they evolve. They become more intentional, more balanced, and ultimately more powerful. Anna's story was a marketing director who found a new way to lead. Before burnout, Anna believed that great leaders do everything themselves. After burnout, she realized great leaders empower others. So she redefined success by balancing high performance with sustainability. She made space for reflection, deep working and personal growth, and she became a stronger, more effective leader, not despite burnout, because of what it taught her. And what does it feel like now? A renewed sense of purpose, because you no longer work just to keep up, but to lead with intention. Confidence in managing stress and workload, because you now have the tools to maintain control. Introduce gratitude into your life, not just for recovering, but for the clarity burnout forced upon you. And this is where leaders truly thrive. And this is where you're headed. So where are you on this continuum again? Are you ignoring the warning lights? Are you running on an empty tank, hoping things will improve? Are you at the breaking point where everything feels impossible? Wherever you are, you're not stuck here, because today I'll show you exactly how to move forward faster, smarter, and without sacrificing what matters most. So let's get started. We should now just take some time to consider the hidden burnout traps for senior leaders. These are the silent threats that will take you down. And let's start by exposing the 3 hidden traps that high-level executives like Sarah, Mark, and countless others unknowingly fell into. They're not just side effects of leadership, they're the silent destroyers of your resilience, your clarity, and your long-term success. They're insidious because they disguise themselves as just part of the job. They are normalized, seen as the price of ambition, but they are the very signals that burnout is taking hold. So if you don't recognize and you don't dismantle these traps, they will grind you down until there is nothing left. But what are the 3 of them? Firstly, the overload paradox, which is your ability to make sharp decisions, erodes with every choice that you make. You have the loneliness of leadership, where you carry everyone else's burdens, but who carries yours? And the third is the success trap, because you define yourself by achievement. So what happens when success falters? Now let's break these 3 down. First trap, the overload paradox. Decision fatigue will take you down. Executives are wired to handle pressure, to solve problems, and to make those tough calls. And that's what got you here. But even the sharpest minds have limits. Every day you're making hundreds, sometimes thousands of decisions. Some are small, some are life-altering, but each one drains mental energy. And this isn't some abstract theory. It's decision fatigue. It's a neurological reality backed by decades of research, where your brain has a limited supply of cognitive fuel each day. And by the time you reach the afternoon, that reserve is tapped out. It's running low. So think about it. Think about this for a moment. How sharp are your decisions at 5 p.m. compared with 9 a.m? How many times have you approved something late in the day that you later regretted? And the story here from Mark, the executive who was running on empty. He's a senior executive I worked with personally. He described it perfectly. By the end of the day, I was making calls on autopilot, and the next morning I was spending hours cleaning up the mistakes I made. That's what decision fatigue does. It doesn't just slow you down, it actively degrades your ability to think, to judge, and to lead. But what does that feel like? What does it look like? It's feeling like your mind is clouded and unable to think clearly. You're struggling with basic decisions that should be effortless. You're signing off on things just to get them off your plate, get them out of your in-basket. Then you're dealing with the fallout later. This isn't a sign of weakness. It's your brain screaming out for relief. And next comes the loneliness of leadership. You carry it all, but who carries you? because leadership is isolating. Even in a crowded boardroom, you can feel completely alone. Your team looks to you for answers, your employees expect certainty, and your stakeholders demand results and returns. And where do you go when you're the one that's drowning? Harvard Business Review found that 61% of executives like you report feelings of isolation, and that number skyrockets during high pressure situations or crises. So the story of a CEO with nowhere to turn. One CEO I coach confided in me, everyone comes to me with their problems, but there's no one I can go to for mine. This is the unspoken burden of leadership. You can't be vulnerable because you fear it will be seen as a weakness. You don't share your struggles because you think no one will understand. But here's the danger. Isolation erodes emotional resilience. But what does that feel like? It feels like you're emotionally drained, but you're unable to share it. You're second guessing yourself because there's no one to help you process challenges. You're withdrawing from colleagues and even loved ones because you feel misunderstood, and you were never meant to carry this alone. And finally, the success trap. When your identity is your achievements. We all know that success is intoxicating. It's what fuels the late nights, the extra work, the sacrifices. But what happens when success falters? What happens when you lose a major deal? What happens when your company's performance starts to dip? What happens when, despite your best efforts, things go wrong? If your entire identity is built on achievement, then failure, even a temporary setback, feels like personal destruction. And the story here of a CEO who couldn't separate self-worth from success. This high-level executive that we worked with summed it up perfectly when she said, "When my business struggled, I felt like I'd failed as a person, like I had no value outside of what I'd built." This is a success trap. It happens because high achievers over-identify with their professional accomplishments. It becomes impossible to separate your self-worth from your results. And what does that look like or feel like? You're feeling worthless after a failure, even if it's only a temporary one. You're tying your self-esteem to your external achievements. You're experiencing extreme anxiety whenever things don't go perfectly well. But here's the most dangerous part. Because you equate performance with self-worth, you push yourself even harder to prove your value. And that's how burnout becomes inevitable. So a final thought here, these traps are designed to break you, but you can break free. You can't outwork decision fatigue. You have to rewire how you operate. You can't lead in isolation. You need systems and support. You can't attach your self-worth to success. You need to redefine what leadership really means. So, if you recognize yourself in these traps, you're not alone and you don't have to stay stuck there. Next, we'll talk about how to dismantle these burnout triggers, how to rebuild resilience, and to reclaim control over your performance and your well-being. Okay, let's move forward. Okay, so it's now time to focus upon the science behind burnout, trying to understand what's really happening in your brain and your body. Because burnout isn't just feeling tired or short-term overwhelmed. It's physiologically and it's neurologically breakdown caused by prolonged stress. So if you've ever wondered why you can't concentrate like you used to, why you struggle to make decisions that once felt effortless, how you feel and why you feel emotionally drained and reactive, why you experience persistent fatigue that sleep and rest doesn't fix. It's because your brain and your body are under attack. So let's break down what's happening so you can finally understand why you feel this way, and more importantly, how to fix it. How does chronic stress rewire your brain? The destructive cycle of burnout is because your brain is incredibly adaptive. It constantly adjusts to the demands placed upon it. But the chronic stress starts to rewire your brain in harmful ways. It leads to cognitive decline, emotional instability, and a loss of decision-making power. Think of it like a car engine constantly running at full throttle. It's only a matter of time before something breaks. So now let's explore the 3 key areas of your brain that's affected by burnout and how this impacts your performance and your overall health and well-being. Firstly, the role of cortisol. This is the stress hormone that is silently damaging you. It's your body's primary stress hormone. It's what keeps you alert and ready to respond in high pressure situations. So in short bursts, cortisol is beneficial. But when stress becomes chronic, cortisol remains elevated in your bloodstream for too long. It's causing severe damage to critical brain regions. Firstly, let's talk about the hippocampus. This is your memory and your learning center. It starts to shrink because the hippocampus acts as your brain's librarian, carefully storing and retrieving important information. Chronic stress fires the librarian. It leaves a mess of scattered documents or books everywhere. They're incomplete. The files are distorted. It makes it harder to remember details, organize thoughts, or to learn new information. What does this feel like? You're struggling to remember conversations or key facts. You're feeling mentally foggy or unable to organize ideas. You're revisiting past memories and feeling overwhelmed with negativity. After the hippocampus, again in the limbic system, secondly, the amygdala. This is your emotional response system. It starts to become overactive. So your hippocampus is shrinking, now your amygdala is becoming overactive. This is the area responsible for fear, emotional reactivity, and your stress responses. Under chronic stress, it becomes hypersensitive. It means small frustrations trigger big emotional reactions. And what does this feel like? Irritability, frustration, and emotional outbursts. It's a constant state of being on edge. Even when it's a non-stressful situation, you react impulsively rather than responding with clarity. Thirdly, the brain area, the prefrontal cortex, your rational thinking and your decision-making hub becomes weakened. Wow, shrinking, oversensitive, and now weakened. Okay, this is the most dangerous effect of burnout because your rational brain starts shutting down, allowing your emotional brain to take control. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for your problem solving, your impulse control, and your strategic thinking. These are all essential leadership skills, I'm sure you'd agree. And what does this feel like? Well, you're struggling to make decisions, you're feeling stuck, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're second guessing yourself. Impulsively, you start making bad calls just to get it over with. You're feeling lost, like you're reacting rather than leading. And if these changes continue unchecked, burnout becomes inevitable. So let's reiterate about the hippocampus with the layman's analogy again. I want you to get this straight. Imagine the hippocampus as your brain's librarian. You're cataloguing all the information that comes in. When you're calm and relaxed, we encode information away in our memory center. Let's call that the library. It's in a clear, it's in a structured way. It's ready then for recall and retrieval when needed. That's learning, that's memory. However, when chronic stress fires the librarian, it leaves a mess of scattered books around the library, makes it harder to find and remember details, makes it harder to organise thoughts or to learn new information. The library has incomplete books and files and is encoded away with a negative emotional burden. So when you ask for the librarian to go and get the book, it comes back damaged. In this context, the bad feelings sweep over you on recall because every memory is stored away with fact and emotion. Okay, so crucially, we should consider here the role of glucose. This is the fuel your brain is starving for. Most people think mental exhaustion is just about time management, but in reality, it's about energy management. Because your brain is a power-hungry machine consuming 20% of your total energy, despite making up only 2% of your body weight. So it's hungry, it's glucose hungry. And glucose is the brain's primary fuel source. Every decision, every calculation, every moment of emotional control, it all depends on the level of glucose. But how much glucose does your brain need? Well, research says it needs 120 grams per day. But your brain cannot store the glucose here, meaning it requires a steady supply from the bloodstream. And what happens when glucose levels drop? Well, under chronic stress, poor diet, relentless pressure, your brain burns through the glucose faster than usual, leading to decision fatigue. This is where small choices feel overwhelming. Even deciding what to eat feels exhausting. Your brain starts defaulting to the easiest option, not always the best one. Secondly, you get impaired judgment. Your risk assessment becomes skewed. This leads to poor strategic calls. You struggle to see the bigger picture. You make reactionary decisions rather than strategic ones. Thirdly, you experience emotional instability because low glucose weakens impulse control, makes you more prone to frustration, anxiety, and overreaction, and it becomes harder to regulate emotions. That's leading to snapping at colleagues, avoiding interactions, or just shutting down. And fourthly, you experience slower mental processing because tasks take longer to complete because your brain is running on empty. Your creativity, your problem solving, and your clear thinking become nearly impossible. As an example, this is why even simple decisions like choosing what to eat for dinner can feel overwhelming after one of these stressful days. Your brain is essentially out of fuel, and if you repeat the same actions the next day, you'll be out of fuel again, and so on. This cycle has to be broken. But how to break the cycle and to restore brain energy? Well, the good news, you can stop this downward spiral by making small, targeted changes that replenish your brain's resources. You can eat balanced meals, include complex carbohydrates such as whole grains, fruits, vegetables, for a slow release of glucose rather than the energy crashes. Okay, you can avoid long gaps between meals. can aim for steady glucose supply by eating every 4 to 5 hours. Stay hydrated, because hydration or dehydration impairs glucose metabolism. This reduces cognitive performance. You can manage your stress levels because techniques like breath work, so simple, and mindfulness conserve your glucose by reducing the unnecessary cognitive strain and burden. And you can also prioritize sleep, because poor sleep increases stress hormones, which interfere with glucose regulation and brain recovery. So a final thought here: your brain is under siege, but you can take back control. Not everything is lost. Burnout is not about working too hard. It's about your brain being forced to function in a depleted state day after day without recovery. And I bet you wouldn't let your phone battery run on 1%, would you? You wouldn't leave the house with a flat phone battery. So why do you let your brain run out of energy? So think about this for a moment. If you keep operating in survival mode, burnout and worse is inevitable. But if you learn to manage your brain's energy resources, decision-making clarity, emotional resilience, and peak optimal performance return. So the next step is simple: break the cycle, replenish, recover, and reclaim the clarity and control you've been missing. Let's move forward on this. Okay, so now at this stage we should consider in a little more detail the prefrontal cortex under stressful conditions and why leadership becomes a battle against your own brain. Because the prefrontal cortex, which we'll call PFC, is your brain's executive command center. It's the source of your rational thinking, your impulse control, strategic planning, and emotional regulation. It's really the powerhouse that allows you leaders to think clearly, to make sound and good decisions, and to maintain composure under pressure. But when you're under chronic stress, this high-performance system begins to fail. Instead of operating as the rational, calculated leader you once were, you find yourself making impulsive choices. You start reacting emotionally, and you're struggling to see beyond the immediate crisis. Your ability to lead with clarity and confidence is slowly stripped away, leaving behind exhaustion, frustration, and self-doubt. So if you've ever felt like you're losing control of your thinking, like your brain isn't working the way it used to, or like you're making decisions that you later regret, then this is probably the reason. So let's break it down. Firstly, rational thinking. Why stress turns your decision making into chaos? Because in a high pressure role, every decision matters, you know this, and the ability to think logically, weigh risks, and to see multiple perspectives is what separates strong leaders from those that are struggling. But once chronic stress hijacks your rational thinking, your brain shifts from careful analysis to quick, reactive survival responses. So what actually happens under stress? Well, you jump to conclusions. You're acting on instinct rather than logic. Long-term consequences start to become an afterthought. You're just trying to survive the moment. And your brain redirects resources to the amygdala, which is your fear center, making emotion-based decisions more common. And cognitive flexibility collapses, leaving you stuck in a rigid black and white thinking. You're unable to adapt or to see any alternative solutions. I'll give you a real world example from some of our clients. One of those, a CEO overwhelmed by financial pressure, instinctively slashes budgets, but in doing so destroys employee morale, damages long-term growth. So decisions made under stress often feel necessary, but in hindsight, they reveal the destructive nature of burnout. Secondly, our impulse control, because when stress turns leaders into reactionary decision makers, it's impulse control that's one of the first casualties of burnout, because the PFC, or the prefrontal cortex, acts as your braking system, allowing you to pause, reflect, and to respond rationally rather than to react emotionally. But under chronic stress, this braking system weakens. It leads to rash, emotionally charged decisions that start to erode your trust and your credibility. And why does this happen under stress? Because reactivity has replaced rationality. Leaders snap, they overcommit, or they act impulsively. When the emotional responses take over, such as anger, frustration, irritability, it bleeds into your leadership decisions, and instant gratification behaviors start to emerge. Overeating, drinking, avoidance, or distractions all become day-to-day coping mechanisms. And again, another real-world example, one of our executives under immense pressure lashes out at a colleague in a meeting, instantly damaging your relationships and your credibility. Because impulse-driven leadership isn't just unproductive, it's destructive. It creates instability, it lowers team morale, and it leads to regretful decisions. Thirdly, strategic planning. Why burnout makes you short-sighted and stagnant? It's because great leadership, as we know, is about vision. It's about adaptability, and it's about longer-term strategic thinking. But when stress hijacks your rational brain, your ability to see the bigger picture starts to disappear. And instead of making thoughtful strategic decisions, you become locked in crisis management mode. You're fighting daily fires with no time, no energy left for innovation, strategy, or growth. So what happens under stress? You start to focus only on short-term survival. You're ignoring long-term consequences. Decision paralysis sets in. The brain becomes overwhelmed by complexity, starts to freeze under pressure. You default back to old habits. You avoid innovation and creativity, and your ability to prioritize crumbles. It leads to decision fatigue and mental exhaustion. Another example, one of our business leaders was drowning in stress, abandoning an innovation project that could transform their company's future, instead focusing solely on short-term financial metrics. And this is why stressed leaders don't innovate. They retreat back into the familiar, and they start to fail to see opportunities right in front of them. Fourthly, emotional regulation. Why leadership composure breaks down under stress. It's emotional regulation is what actually keeps great leaders level-headed in a crisis. They're able to inspire confidence, and they're capable of leading through uncertainty. But burnout destroys emotional stability because small setbacks feel catastrophic. Patience evaporates, and decision making is driven by fear, frustration, and self-doubt. And what happens under stress? Emotional outbursts become more frequent. It affects workplace morale. Small problems feel overwhelming, increasing the urge to quit or to shut down. Self-doubt and fear creeps in and takes over. This leads to indecisiveness and risk aversion. And finally, emotional hijacking occurs, where fear and frustration override logic and rational thought. Another senior exec, overwhelmed by pressure, experiences a breakdown in a critical meeting. She loses credibility and confidence in her ability to lead. When emotional regulation fails, burnout isn't just internal, it affects the entire organization. So how to strengthen the prefrontal cortex, which, by the way, is the part in the frontal lobe behind your forehead. Okay, that's where the prefrontal executive system works. So the good news to reclaim control is that the brain can recover, but only if you take proactive steps to rebuild resilience and to prevent any further damage. You can practice mindfulness and deep breathing, because this is not soft. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It restores your prefrontal cortex control over your emotions and your decision making. You shift back from the unconscious to the conscious. You can prioritize your high quality sleep, because sleep deprivation literally shrinks your prefrontal cortex. 7 to 8 hours of deep uninterrupted rest is essential for perfect cognitive recovery. You should engage in cognitive flexibility exercises by training your brain to learn to adapt under pressure. When I work with my athletes, it's about putting them under pressure and helping them have the strategies to adapt. Stress and pressure is your best friend if you use them wisely. So you can read diverse perspectives, you can play strategy-based games, you can expose yourself to new ideas, you can limit overstimulation, reduce decision fatigue by automating low priority tasks. Great for generative AI, can help you with this. Set clear boundaries and eliminate unnecessary distractions. And you can schedule strategic breaks, because the brain's focus cycles last only about 90 minutes at the most. So taking regular breaks prevents exhaustion and it maintains high level thinking. So a final thought: leadership is a mental endurance sport. The best leaders don't just survive stress, they train their brains to handle it. And by protecting and strengthening the prefrontal cortex, you safeguard your ability to make high stakes decisions with clarity, to lead with composure, even under the most extreme pressure. You can see opportunities that others miss, and you can maintain long-term resilience and avoid burnout. So you wouldn't let a pilot fly with a failing navigation system. So why lead with a burned out brain? So it's time to reclaim control. Let's continue to move forward. And remember this key insight about stress and leadership, and why even the best leaders feel like they're losing control. Let's just take a step back for a moment. You've seen how stress hijacks the prefrontal cortex, how it erodes your rational thinking, your impulse control, your strategic planning, and your emotional regulation. But what does this actually mean for you as a leader? Well, it means that stress doesn't just make you tired, it makes you someone you don't recognize. The composed, strategic leader, now second-guessing every decision. The visionary with a clear long-term plan is now stuck in survival mode, fighting daily fires. The leader who once inspired confidence now snapping at colleagues, withdrawing or feeling emotionally overwhelmed. And the worst part, it happens so gradually, it's a creep that you don't notice until it's already taken hold. So think about this, the stress trap, and why even seasoned leaders become reactive and unfocused. And it's no matter how experienced you are, stress rewires your leadership instincts. It pushes you into reactivity instead of deliberate action. You start reacting emotionally, like we've mentioned, rather than responding logically and strategically. You default to just getting through the day instead of driving real impact. You become more defensive less open-minded, and less creativity. And this is where great leaders fall into a dangerous trap, believing that if they just push through, they'll regain control. But here's the truth: you cannot outwork a burned out brain. The more you ignore the damage, the deeper the cycle becomes. And soon, leadership no longer feels like a position of strength. It feels like a burden you can't shake. And this is not where great leaders want to be. Great leaders thrive, like yourself, on clarity, on focus, and on high impact decision making. But burnout strips away all of that, leaves only frustration, self-doubt, and exhaustion. And this is why many executives at the peak of their careers feel totally lost, despite outward successes. And it's because, what's the point of leading if you can no longer trust your own mind? But there is a way forward. By understanding how the stress is reshaping your brain and actively reversing the damage, you can reclaim your edge. And up next, we'll explore exactly how to do that. But what about the body and burnout? What about the physical toll of stress and leadership overload? The brain does not suffer in isolation. What happens in your mind doesn't stay in your mind. It spreads throughout your whole entire body, triggering a chain reaction of physiological damage. At first, it's subtle. You brush it off as just feeling a bit tired, just another headache, just a little tension in your neck and shoulders. But stress is never just anything, because left unchecked, it hardwires itself into your nervous system. It creates a stress response loop that traps you in a constant state of physical and mental exhaustion. So ponder on this loop just for a moment, because this stress response loop is a vicious cycle that's going to drain you completely. Your brain perceives a threat through whatever reason, and it doesn't matter whether it's a boardroom confrontation, a high-stake decision, or an email marked urgent. Your body doesn't differentiate between a real life-threatening danger and just a leadership crisis. Your fight or flight system is activated. Your brain floods your body with adrenaline and cortisol. Your heart rate spikes, your blood pressure rises, your muscles tense. You are preparing to run or to fight or to freeze. Okay, so your body shifts all the resources to immediate survival. Your digestion slows down, leading to gut issues, bloating and inflammation. The immune system is suppressed, making you more vulnerable to illness. Blood flow is restricted away from the prefrontal cortex, which impairs decision making, creativity, and problem solving. The stress never truly stops, and in a real emergency, this response should switch off once the threat is gone. Remember the saber-toothed tiger. You're supposed to be fearful and to run and leg it, but it's not a saber-toothed tiger, because once the tiger's gone, your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in and relaxes you. But a constant state of trickle and creep. In leadership, there's just another email, there's another decision, another presentation, another crisis. This means your body is stuck in survival mode every single day. And the wear and tear of leadership stress is what chronic activation does to your body. At first it feels like you're handling it, you're coping, but then you start noticing the cracks. You got persistent fatigue even after a full night's sleep. You got headaches, you got migraines, you got pressure building in your skull. You got tight shoulders, you got back pain as if your body is physically bracing for impact. You have digestive issues because blood flow keeps diverting away from your gut, ready for fight or flight. You have a weakened immune system because you catch colds easily and flus, and they linger longer and longer. You have elevated blood pressure, a silent threat that increases your risk of heart disease. And most important, and probably the most dangerous of all, is you have a numbing effect where you stop noticing the damage because the stress has now become your normal. But stress isn't just physical, it's not just psychological, it alters your very identity. Chronic stress doesn't just affect your body, it rewires how you see yourself, your decisions, you as a leader. You start operating on autopilot. You go through the motions, but your edge is gone. You react instead of responding. You feel like you're always one step behind. You lose your ability to feel joy in your work, and your passion turns into exhaustion. You stop seeing yourself as the leader you once were. Burnout doesn't just take your energy, it takes your identity, who you are. And the longer this cycle continues, the harder it will be to break free. But here's the truth, you can interrupt the stress response loop. You can regain control over your mind, your body, and your performance. And next, coming up, we'll explore exactly how to break this cycle and how to rebuild your resilience from the ground up. But first, two critical processes for you to zoom in on. Let's talk about sleep disruption and energy depletion, which are the silent killers of leadership performance, because stress isn't just something you feel during the day. It follows you into the night. It embeds itself into your nervous system. It hijacks your ability to recover, and it robs you of the energy you so desperately need to be a great leader. At first, you tell yourself you just need one good night of sleep. But what happens when that night never comes? Sleep disruption and energy depletion don't just make you tired, they slowly break you down physically, mentally, and emotionally. And what happens with sleep disruption when stress steals your ability to recover? You're exhausted, your body feels heavy, your mind is foggy, and all you want is a deep, restful sleep. You just want it all to go away. But the moment your head hits the pillow, your brain won't shut off. You lie there, you replay conversations, you second guess decisions, you worry about tomorrow. You finally drift off only to wake again at 2 a.m, heart pounding, mind racing. You check your phone because everyone seems to have their phone by their bed. Unbelievable. You're hoping for distraction, but the blue light only makes everything worse. And when morning comes, you wake up feeling like you've been in a fight, not in a recovery state. And what does science say about this? Well, science says about stress-induced sleep deprivation is that your brain is designed to cleanse itself during the sleep. It's supposed to flush out the toxins, to repair your neurons, to consolidate and encode away your memories. But chronic stress disrupts this process in major ways because cortisol in your blood remains elevated. This will prevent deep sleep cycles. The amygdala, which is your brain's fear center, remains overactive, triggering nighttime wake-ups. Your memory consolidation fails, leaving you struggling to recall details and to make connections. And the results of all this is pretty obvious. I think you'd agree. You don't just lose sleep, you lose cognitive power. You wake up just as exhausted as when you went to bed, and you start the next day already depleted, feeding the burnout cycle. And it's not just an inconvenience, it's a leadership crisis. Because when you lose sleep, you lose the ability to think critically and to make high stakes decisions. Your emotional stability disappears. It makes you more reactive and impatient and niggly. Your capacity to perform under pressure without feeling overwhelmed is non-existent. And it doesn't just stop there, because now your body is also paying the price. So let's just move on now to energy depletion, because when your body can't keep up with the demands of leadership, you're running on empty. No amount of caffeine brings you back. No weekend off is enough to fully recharge you. Chronic stress now has drained every energy reserve you have, leaving you physically exhausted, mentally sluggish, and emotionally fragile. Your body starts to ache. Like I've said, tight shoulders, sore back, tension headaches, sore neck. Digestion is a mess, discomfort, gut issues, bloating. Your hunger and desire, your motivation is gone. Because tasks that once energize you now feel impossible. And perhaps the worst symptom of all, the feeling that you're pushing through quicksand. You're walking through quicksand. Every step forward feels heavier than the last. So what is the science behind stress-driven energy loss? Well, burnout is biological depletion. It's not just mental exhaustion, because the stress depletes your body's glucose. Remember the brain fuel we talked about? It depletes it faster than it can be replenished, so you're always short. Adrenaline surges because of the fight or flight. This leaves you wired during the day but completely drained by the evening. Muscles stay tense, keeping your body in a constant fight or flight mode. Your body thinks it needs to fight or escape, so muscles will always be tight. The result, you're always fatigued, no matter how much sleep you try to get. You start relying on bad habits like sugar, caffeine, stimulants, just to function or get through the day. Or sometimes even worse, you begin withdrawing from colleagues, from decisions, and from life. And this is how burnout wins. It doesn't happen in an instant. It happens bit by bit. It's a creep. A slow and sleep deprivation and energy loss strip away your ability to function. So you need to break the cycle. You need to restore sleep and energy before it's too late, because this is the turning point. Because you don't just need more sleep, you need to reset your entire recovery system. You need to rebuild your sleep quality. Create a shutdown ritual. Disconnect from screens, reduce stimulation, allow your brain to unwind. Control the light exposure, limit blue light at night, increase natural light in the morning, get your D3 to reset your circadian rhythm. Use breathwork techniques to relax your mind and your muscles. Slow, controlled breathing reduces cortisol in the bloodstream, prepares your body for deep sleep. You need to replenish your energy reserves. Balance blood sugar levels. Focus on whole foods. Avoid sugar spikes that lead to energy crashes. Incorporate active recovery. Gentle movement like walking, stretching helps release tension without draining any more energy. Schedule in your day strategic breaks. Your brain cannot function at high performance for hours upon end without any structured recovery periods, because here's the truth: you can't lead, you can't perform, you can't even think clearly when you're physically and mentally depleted. So burnout doesn't just steal your time, it steals your life. But you don't have to let it, because we're going to explore how, as I mentioned before, how to rebuild resilience, how to restore peak performance without sacrificing any of your well-being. So let's now start to turn the tables. The brain's resilience and how we can rewire stress into strength. So if you've been feeling like stress has permanently rewired your brain for anxiety, reactivity and exhaustion, you're not imagining it, because chronic stress has been training your brain. It's been strengthening those neural pathways for fear, for overthinking and impulsivity, while weakening your circuits responsible for rational thinking, emotional control and your long-term vision. But here's the most important thing to remember. Your brain is adaptable. It can change, it can heal, it can rebuild. And this process is called neuroplasticity. And it means that even if stress has taken a toll, you can retrain your brain for clarity, for resilience and for high performance leadership. So let's explore exactly how this works and how you can take control of it. So how your brain changes under stress and how we can reverse it. Your brain is like a vast network of highways with neural connections acting as the roads that carry electrical impulse signals between different regions. So every time you repeat a thought, every time you have a reaction, or you repeat or have a new behavior, you start to reinforce a specific neural pathway. It's like carving a deeper and faster route between two destinations. And under chronic stress, your brain has been reinforcing these neural pathways for overwhelm and negative self-talk, such as I'll never catch up, I'll never get this right, hyper reactivity and fear-based decision making, emotional instability and burnout driven exhaustion. So just as stress has trained your brain into survival mode, you can train it to back out by creating some new, healthier neural pathways. You can't destroy the old ones, but what you can do is you can bypass them. So the A1 is congested, take another route around it every time. So when we rebuild neural pathways, this is how your brain rewires itself. Neurons that fire together wire together. You've probably heard that neuroscience statement before. It means every time you think a thought or you repeat a behavior, the brain is strengthening the neural connection responsible for it. And this is why negative thought loops become automatic, because the brain, like a muscle, reinforces what it practices most. So if you keep using the same negative thought, it will keep coming up. It will be automatic. It'll get stronger and faster. Synaptic pruning. This is the brain's decluttering system. This is where it eliminates unused neural pathways to optimize efficiency. So that means if you stop engaging in stress-driven habits, the neural connections that sustain them begin to weaken, and they will eventually be almost disappeared. They won't be fully gone, but they're almost. In other words, what you stop feeding dies off. Then we should look at myelination. This is where we make neural pathways faster and more efficient, because the more you use a neural pathway, the more myelin, which is a fatty insulation layer, wraps around the neural pathway. It makes communication between the neurons faster and more automatic. So this is why with consistent practice, new habits become effortless over time. So how do we override stress-driven pathways and build new resilient neural highways? We start to bypass old pathways. We start to train our brain for calm, focus and high performance. We're making a conscious effort, because if stress has wired your brain for the opposites, like overreaction, exhaustion, negativity, we need to reroute those patterns by intentionally choosing healthier responses over and over again until they become automatic. And there's a 5-step process for rewiring your brain for resilience. Number 1, identify negative thought loops. Recognize them, that they're automatic stress responses that you have built over time. Don't blame anyone else, blame yourself. For example, I always feel overwhelmed before a big presentation. Keep saying that before every presentation, it will become ingrained. So you've got to identify them. Step 2, we need to introduce a new, healthier thought or action. We need to replace those old responses with intentional, constructive behaviours. For example, instead of panic before a meeting, practice deep breathing, visualise success. It's a new outcome. Step 3, repeat, 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 because consistency is key. The more you use the new pathway, the stronger it becomes. And neuroscientific research suggests it takes at least 66 days to solidify a new habit. Don't believe the popular psychology you see in these cheap books. This is neuroscience. Step 4, make it automatic through habit stacking. Attach new behaviours to existing habits. For example, doing breathing exercises before every Zoom call. This helps the new neural pathway integrate seamlessly into your daily routine. And then step 5, reinforce with positive feedback. The brain releases dopamine when you experience progress. You strengthen motivation. You can celebrate small wins to keep reinforcing the new, healthier neural connections. This process isn't just theory, it's how the brain rewires itself at a biological and structural level. And what does this look like in real life? Well, powerful strategy now is harnessing neuroplasticity for stress resilience and performance. By building new resilient neural pathways, you need to deliberately practice mental and physical habits that strengthen clarity, emotional stability, and your cognitive endurance. Mindfulness and meditation, crucial. Studies show that just 8 weeks of meditation, this is not religious by the way, this is just the calming of the mind, can increase the grey matter density in the prefrontal cortex. So this strengthens emotional regulation, improves your decision making, and builds resilience under pressure. Remember how stress shrunk your prefrontal cortex? Cognitive reframing. We can actively reframe challenges as opportunities. This strengthens the prefrontal cortex ability to override fear-based responses. An example may be, instead of thinking, this challenge will break me, shift it to, this challenge is training me for the next level of leadership. We can introduce physical exercise because regular movement boosts neurogenesis. Neurogenesis is the growth of new brain cells, and it enhances mental resilience. So even 20 minutes of daily exercise can improve cognitive function and stress resistance. As mentioned earlier, we need quality sleep. During deep sleep, the brain consolidates our learning and it prunes away the unnecessary neural connections, optimizing our cognitive function. Don't forget the cognitives for you guys. It's the thinking and the feeling. Okay, without stress, without sleep, this stress, the pathways remain dominant, keeping burnout in control. So without sleep, stress has got its way. Continuous learning and skill development, when we're engaging in new challenges, it keeps our plasticity high. It protects us against cognitive decline because leaders who regularly push their brains to learn new things daily maintain higher levels of mental agility and performance. So as a final thought, you can rewire your brain for resilience. We've done it with hundreds of CEOs and CFOs and COOs. Burnout may have rewired your brain for survival mode, but you have the power to retrain it for high performance leadership. Every time you choose focus over distraction, patience over reaction, and calm over chaos, you are actively reshaping your brain at a structural level. The best leaders aren't just mentally tough, they're mentally trained. So let's consider what makes leadership burnout different from, say, housewife's burnout or an athlete's burnout. Well, burnout is brutal for everyone, but leadership burnout is a different beast entirely, because for most people, burnout means exhaustion, disengagement, and a decline in motivation. But for leaders, it means the collapse of clarity, of composure, the collapse of strategic control, the very qualities that define high performance leadership. Leadership burnout doesn't just drain your energy, it undermines your authority, your decision making, your ability to lead effectively, because it puts your company, your team, and your own career at risk in ways that most people simply don't experience. And why? Well, because when you're at the top, everything is magnified. The stress is magnified, the stakes, the relentless pressure to perform. So let's quickly explore the three defining stressors that make leadership burnout uniquely destructive. Firstly, the constant visibility when you can never show weakness, because leadership is a spotlight that never switches off. From the moment you step into the senior role, your decisions, your demeanour, even your exhaustion are constantly observed, scrutinised and judged. Your team looks to you for direction, even when you're running on empty. Your board expects results, even when you're struggling to think straight, and your competitors and industry peers are watching for any signs of weakness. And here's the problem. Burnout isn't just an internal battle, it's a visible one. When an employee burns out, they can quietly disengage. But when a leader burns out, the entire organisation feels it. But instead of acknowledging the strain, leaders mask their exhaustion. They push through it, they keep performing, even when their cognitive capacity, their emotional stability, and their decision-making power have been eroded by that day. The fear, think of that word, not just stress, the fear of being perceived as weak keeps leaders trapped in burnout far longer than they should be. The results are they stop trusting themselves, they stop leading, they feel like leading from behind, they're constantly pretending to have it all together. Your team picks up on your stress, it creates a ripple of dysfunction and instability. And this is the silent suffering of leadership burnout. Exhausted yet unable to stop. Breaking this cycle requires recognizing that real leadership isn't about pretending, it's about sustainability. The second point to note here is the high stakes of leadership, the weight of every decision. When you're at the top, every decision carries such weight. A wrong move can cost millions. A misstep in strategy can damage reputations. And a poorly timed decision can send an entire company into crisis mode. And the higher you climb, the fewer safety nets that you have, because leaders don't get the luxury of making low stakes mistakes. The decisions you make don't just affect you, they affect your employees, your shareholders, stakeholders, your industry standing, even your family. This relentless weight fuels chronic stress, which erodes cognitive function, leading to burnout-driven decision fatigue. And here's what that looks like. The stress loop of leadership decision making. Stage 1, you start out making thoughtful strategic decisions. Stage 2, as the stress builds, your decision making becomes more reactive, more risk averse, more erratic. Stage 3, fatigue sets in, you start avoiding decisions altogether. Not because you don't care, but because you're mentally exhausted. And then the worst case scenario happens. Your ability to think critically and to solve problems deteriorates. You start doubting yourself. You second guess even simple choices. You delay major decisions, not because you don't know what to do, but because you don't have the mental energy to process it anymore. And this is how leadership burnout turns high-powered execs into disconnected, hesitant decision makers. And that's not just dangerous for you, it's dangerous for your organization, your team, and the people who rely on your leadership. If you've ever felt trapped in a state of overthinking, indecisiveness, or just pure mental exhaustion, this is why. And the third difference is time scarcity, the illusion that there's never enough time. Deloitte's research shows that 70% of executives cite lack of time as their biggest stressor. And it makes sense, because leadership isn't just about running the business, it's about managing crises before they escalate. It's about keeping up with rapid industry shifts. It's about balancing strategic planning with day-to-day operations, and it's about handling endless meetings, messages and requests. But here's the real issue. The busier you are, the less time you have to recharge. The more demands placed upon you, the more you sacrifice your own well-being. And the more you push through, the more you normalise burnout as a leadership requirement. So time scarcity isn't just a scheduling issue, it's a burnout trigger. The more overwhelmed you feel, the less bandwidth you have for high-level strategy and deep thinking, for problem solving and innovation, for self-care, for rest and recovery, which are the very things that protect you from burnout. And this is why leaders feel trapped in a cycle of constant motion but diminishing returns. You're always busy but never truly making the impact you want to. And this is why burnout creeps in unnoticed. So the final thought again here to reassure you, leadership burnout isn't inevitable, but it is predictable. If you're feeling exhausted, reactive or mentally overloaded, it's not a personal failing, it's the cost of leadership without a burnout prevention strategy. Leadership burnout happens when constant visibility, high stakes and time scarcity collide, pushing even the strongest leaders into cognitive overload. But here's the reality, it doesn't have to be this way. Burnout isn't the price of success, it's a warning sign that something has to change. Now let's look at the spotlight effect in a little bit more detail. This is the unrelenting pressure of leadership burnout. It doesn't just happen in silence, it happens under the relentless glare of leadership visibility. Every decision, every action, every word you speak is observed, analysed and judged by your team, by your board, your competitors, possibly the media. The higher up you are, the higher you rise, the fewer places there are to hide. This is what we call the spotlight effect. The psychological weight of knowing that every mistake, every hesitation, every moment of doubt is on full display. And over time, the constant scrutiny becomes exhausting. mentally draining, emotionally suffocating. You aren't just expected to perform, you're expected to be flawless. But perfection is a trap, and for leaders, it often leads to emotional suppression, decision paralysis, and a cycle of anxiety-driven exhaustion. So when every move is under a microscope, there is no anonymity, no room to fail quietly, no space to recover without judgment. Your team watches your reactions to gauge their own confidence from it. Your board scrutinises every choice, expecting precision and foresight. Your investors, your clients and your competitors track your moves. They're looking for any sign of weakness to attack. And mistakes don't just feel bigger, they do become bigger, because in leadership, perception shapes reality. A single misstep can shake confidence. It can weaken influence, can even impact stock prices, as you know. One COO who couldn't recover lost the confidence of key stakeholders after a minor misstep in a high-profile presentation. He wasn't prepared. He was not mentally prepared. The mistake itself wasn't catastrophic, but the fallout was, because he became consumed by self-doubt, and every future presentation felt like walking a tightrope. The pressure to get it right every time became paralyzing. And this is what makes leadership burnout different. It's not just about workload. It's about the mental toll of constant scrutiny. The result? Leaders begin to emotionally suppress stress and frustration to maintain their composure. Fatigue builds silently as the energy required to keep it together drains mental reserves, and decision-making suffers as the fear of failure overrides bold strategic thinking. And this is not sustainable. The mind can only carry the weight of the spotlight for so long before it starts to crack. But visibility isn't the only burden. It's compounded by the sheer magnitude of responsibility. And when we turn to high stakes, this is when every decision carries consequences, because leadership is a high stakes game, one where every decision ripples outwards. It impacts employees' profits and the company's future. And unlike most professionals, executives don't just work on a team, they shape the entire system. So consider this: a strategic miscalculation can cost so much money, can run into millions. A bad hiring decision can destabilize an entire department, and a loss in confidence from stakeholders can send share prices tumbling. And with so much at stake, leaders become trapped in hyper-vigilance, fearing that one wrong move could undo years of progress. So what are the psychological toll of high-stakes leadership? Well, firstly, the brain stays locked in a stress response state, constantly scanning the environment for threats. Sleep suffers because the mind refuses to switch off from these high-stakes decision-making, and burnout accelerates as leaders feel unable to step back without consequences. And there's a little data insight from the cost of poor executive decision-making by McKinsey. The report found that poor decision-making at the executive level can lead to productivity losses of up to 23% across an organisation. This means that the mental strain of leadership burnout isn't just personal, it has direct consequences on business performance. And yet, even knowing this, most leaders feel trapped. Why? Because they don't have time to stop. And that third aspect is time scarcity. When there's never enough time to recharge, because the relentless pressure of visibility as we've talked about, and the high stakes decision making is further intensified by one of the greatest stresses of all, time scarcity. The Deloitte research shows that I mentioned 70% of executives cite this lack of time as their biggest stressor, because for leaders, there's never enough time. There's more meetings than hours in a day. There's always another crisis, another demand, another decision waiting to be made. Even your personal time feels invaded. Emails, texts, Slack messages creeping into every spare moment. So there is a leadership time paradox. You work longer hours, believing it'll give you control, yet you feel more out of control than ever. You sacrifice downtime, believing that it's a luxury, yet without it your brain stops functioning optimally. You tell yourself you'll rest when things calm down, when this year end is over, when this board meeting has passed. But in reality, in leadership, they never do. So leaders don't just experience stress, they experience the kind of stress that never stops. So if you don't intervene, it's never going to stop. And unlike employees who can step away, take a break, delegate freely, executives often feel like they don't have that option. This isn't just burnout, it's leadership burnout. It's a specialized form of exhaustion that requires a specialized solution because pushing through it isn't working. And the final thought, like I said before, it's predictable. It's also preventable though, because the constant visibility, the high stakes decision making and the crushing time scarcity create the perfect storm for disaster, for burnout. But the solution isn't to work harder or longer, it's to work smarter. Time isn't the enemy. Your recovery strategy is the key. High performance leadership requires high performance recovery strategies, ones that help leaders operate at peak efficiency without sacrificing their own well-being. Because the best leaders aren't just the hardest workers, they're the most strategically resilient. And up next, we'll explore how to break free from these burnout traps to regain control without sacrificing any of our leadership excellence. Okay, so let's dig a little deeper into the solutions with a neuropsychological approach to leadership burnout, because this isn't just a workload problem, it's a brain problem. The relentless demands of leadership rewire your brain for stress. It pushes leaders into a cycle of mental exhaustion, reactive decision making, and instability in their emotional states. But just as the stress reshapes the brain in destructive ways, the right interventions can rewire it for resilience, for clarity, and for sustainable high performance. That's where our neuropsychological approach comes in. Because unlike traditional methods that focus solely upon time management or stress reduction, our approach targets the root cause, how the brain, how your behaviours, how your emotions interact under chronic pressure. So let's break it down into three key areas. The brain behaviour connection. This is where how leadership stress rewires cognitive function, how we can reverse the damage. Emotional resilience, where we strengthen emotional control to prevent burnout driven reactivity. And tailored strategies, where practical neuroscience backed techniques that help leaders reclaim clarity, decision making power, and sustainable energy. So it isn't just about coping with burnout, it's about rewiring the brain to prevent burnout, to enhance performance, and to create a leadership mindset that's built for the long game. So as we are all individuals, we have to accept that we'll all have differing effects from stress. And understanding your stress response is the first step to breaking the burnout cycle, because it doesn't happen all at once. It builds over time. It's triggered by patterns of stress responses that go unnoticed and unchecked. So to break free, you must first understand how your brain reacts to stress. And this begins with 3 essential steps. Firstly, identifying triggers. Need to pinpoint the specific situations or challenges or pressures that activate your stress response. You then, step 2, you need to observe the reactions, recognize the automatic emotional, physical and behavioral responses that follow. And thirdly, intercepting patterns, learning how to pause, how to recalibrate, how to shift your response before the stress spirals into burnout. So when left unmanaged, these stress responses become deeply ingrained, reinforcing burnout-driven cycles of overwork, emotional exhaustion and reactive decision-making. But here's the good news. With self-awareness and the right neuropsychological strategies, you can rewire this brain to respond differently, reducing your stress, regaining your control back and preventing burnout before it takes hold. And as we've mentioned, we need rewiring of our neural pathways. Remember the roads? We need to train our brain for resilience, mental resilience. Chronic stress isn't just a feeling, it's a pattern etched into your brain. And over time, stress reinforces these negative thought loops that creates entrenched pathways that fuel your exhaustion, fuel your self-doubt and your reactive decision making and poor problem solving. But here's the game changer. As I said, neuroplasticity means that these patterns can be rewired by using guided cognitive reframing. Using mindfulness techniques, we can interrupt old stress-driven pathways and we can replace them with new positive neural circuits that enhance clarity, focus and resilience. So, as I mentioned, cognitive reframing, this helps to shift your perspective, allows you to reinterpret stresses in a way that reduces their emotional impact upon you. And instead of seeing challenges as threats, the brain is trained to view them as opportunities for growth, for learning, for problem solving. It strengthens the prefrontal cortex ability to override those fear-based reactions. And mindfulness techniques such as breath work, meditation, present moment awareness help deactivate the brain's stress response. It allows the nervous system to reset. And these practices train the mind to remain calm under pressure, to regulate your emotions and to prevent overreaction to the stress triggers. So instead of a brain wired for burnout, we create a brain wired for calm. It's wired for control. It's wired for high performance leadership. These new pathways don't just help you manage stress, they make strategic thinking, emotional stability and energy conservation to become second nature. And even more strategies are optimizing decision making under pressure by strengthening this PFC, our prefrontal cortex, for resilient leadership. Effective decision making in high pressure environments is not just about intelligence. It's about training the brain to respond with clarity, with logic and composure whilst under stress. Because when stress takes over, the prefrontal cortex, the brain center for rational thought and strategic planning, becomes compromised, it's hijacked. And this is when leaders start making the wrong, reactive, short-sighted decisions rather than thinking about the problem critically and strategically. But here's the solution. We can train the brain to resist stress-driven reactivity and to optimize decision-making under using these three powerful neuropsychological techniques. Firstly, mental priming, preconditioning the brain to respond strategically rather than emotionally in high-stakes situations. Deliberate reflection, where we strengthen self-awareness to refine future decision-making patterns. And decision frameworks, where we apply structured models to streamline our choices and to reduce our decision fatigue. If we incorporate these techniques into our daily leadership habits, then you can become resilient. You can develop resilience. You can experience high-functioning cognitive processes that allow you to lead with confidence, even under extreme pressure. So, I mentioned the three. Let's just look a little deeper now. What is mental priming? Where we condition the brain for high-performance decision-making. Well, it's the process of pre-conditioning your brain to respond effectively by exposing it to specific thoughts, scenarios or cues in advance of the stress. So just as my athletes visualize their movements before competing, leaders can prime their brains to make those clear strategic decisions before they face the high stakes challenges. But how does it work? Well, it's because the brain thrives on pattern recognition. Okay, it constantly searches for familiar situations to apply its learned responses to. That's how we function. But by mentally rehearsing challenges before they happen, you're training your brain to recognize and apply the best decision-making processes, but automatically. Certain examples of mental priming in action are pre-decision framing. Before a critical meeting or a negotiation, ask yourself, what's the ideal outcome of this discussion? How would my best self handle this challenge? What's the most logical and strategic approach I take? But don't just ask yourself the questions, answer them. And ask them again and answer them again. Secondly, visualization priming. Because studies show that elite athletes who mentally rehearse their actions activate the same neural pathways in the brain as if they were actually physically performing them. That's so powerful. So leaders can apply this by visualizing confident, clear-headed decision making before that high pressure even comes. And thirdly, contextual priming. If you regularly expose yourself to, say, case studies of successful leadership decisions, your brain will naturally adopt similar strategic thinking patterns. So, but how does that strengthen our prefrontal cortex? Well, it builds cognitive efficiency, reduces hesitation and second guessing by reinforcing effective decision-making patterns. It enhances our emotional regulation, so prepares our brain to stay calm under pressure. This prevents fear-based reactions, and it increases confidence and decisiveness. When you prime it for success, you eliminate self-doubt, you eliminate hesitation, you make choices with more clarity and conviction. That's mental priming. Let's move on to deliberate reflection, where we learn from experience. That helps us improve future decisions. Because deliberate reflection is not passive self-awareness. It's structured, goal-oriented analysis designed to refine our executive function. Unlike casual reflection, Deliberate reflection helps leaders extract key lessons from past decisions, ensuring that each experience strengthens our ability to process complex challenges, to recognize bias, and to avoid repeated mistakes. And it works by reacting, instead of reacting emotionally to mistakes or successes. This process helps leaders to extract key insights from past decisions, to refine strategic thinking for future high stakes moments, and it strengthens our neural pathways related to our logic, our foresight and adaptability. Examples of deliberate reflection in action could be daily leadership debrief at the end of each day. Take 5 or 10 minutes to ask, what did I handle well today? What could I have done differently? How will I adjust my approach next time? And answer those questions. It can be a post-decision analysis. After making a major decision, assess, did I rely on logic or was it emotionally driven? What other factors influenced my choice? And was my reasoning sound, or was it affected by bias or stress? And a high stakes scenario review. Before and after crucial meetings or negotiations or crisis situations, you can use reflection exercises to assess performance and to refine future strategies. And how does it strengthen the prefrontal cortex though, deliberate reflection? Well, it enhances metacognition, which is our thinking about thinking. It strengthens self-awareness and cognitive control. It reduces impulsive reactionary decisions. It also reinforces our effective decision pathways. The more you analyze and refine decision-making patterns, the more your brain optimizes neural circuits for logic and strategy. And it eliminates repetitive mistakes. It ensures that past errors lead to growth and improvement rather than reinforcing a cycle of stress-driven decisions. And thirdly, decision frameworks. This is the reducing decision fatigue and improving our strategic thinking, because executives, as you know, make hundreds of decisions daily, which leads to mental exhaustion. It leads to reduced clarity, leads to poor judgment. A structured decision framework helps filter out noise, helps simplify complex choices, and it ensures alignment with long-term objectives. The examples of effective decision frameworks could be the Eisenhower matrix, which helps categorize tasks by urgency and importance, preventing unnecessary decision fatigue. We could use first principles thinking, where we break problems down to their fundamental truths, allowing for clearer, more strategic decisions. Or we could use the 10-10-10 rule, which encourages leaders to ask, how will this decision impact me in 10 minutes, in 10 months, or in 10 years? But how do decision frameworks strengthen the prefrontal cortex? Well, reduces cognitive load. It prevents mental burnout from decision overload. It frees up brain power for critical thinking. It strengthens analytical processing, which helps leaders think strategically rather than emotionally. And it ensures consistency and clarity by eliminating guesswork and reactive decision making under stress. But why are these strategies essential for high stakes leaders? Well, by reducing cognitive load, your priming automates your strategic responses in advance. That makes high pressure decisions for you more efficient, less draining. They strengthen emotional resilience. Your deliberate reflection rewires your emotional responses. This allows you to remain composed even in crisis situations. They improve long-term strategic thinking by integrating priming, reflection and decision frameworks. You will develop stronger intuition, faster analytical skills and better foresight. So a final thought, train your brain for peak leadership performance, because high pressure decision making isn't about talent, it's about training. By priming the brain before the challenges and problems and reflecting deeply after the decisions, you create an optimized decision making system that allows you to navigate high stake situations with confidence, with clarity and fully in your control. So start today. Take 5 minutes to mentally prime for your next big decision and 5 minutes to reflect on past choices. That's all it needs to start. Your prefrontal cortex will thank you for it. And up next, we'll explore how emotional regulation strengthens leadership resilience and prevents burnout. So let's strengthen leadership composure under pressure. High pressure leadership, as we know, demands mental clarity, emotional control, and the ability to respond, not react under stress. Yet when the PFC, the prefrontal cortex, is weakened by chronic stress, emotions become harder to regulate. This leads to frustration, impulsivity and burnout-driven decision-making. The good news, emotional regulation is a trainable skill. By using neuropsychological techniques, leaders can restore balance, can regain composure and prevent stress from hijacking their leadership effectiveness. And here are 3 proven strategies that rewire the brain for emotional resilience. Firstly, control breathing, reclaiming the control in moments of stress. When stress triggers your fight or flight response, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid at the top of your chest. This increases heart rate and amplifies emotional reactivity. So controlled breathing reverses this process. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system and restores a state of calm. And you can apply that by using something like box breathing, which is the 4-4-4 method. You inhale for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, you hold again and wait for 4 seconds, and then you repeat it for 2 to 3 minutes. You can do a 4-7-8 breathing, controlled breathing, inhale for 4, hold for 7 seconds, exhale slowly for 8 seconds. These instantly lower stress levels. The breathing is telling the brain that the body's in good, calm condition. And the application, just use it before any high stakes meetings, any difficult conversations, or any situation where emotions run high. The outcome is that it reduces cortisol levels in your blood, it stabilizes your heart rate, keeps the prefrontal cortex online for rational decision making. Second technique, visualization. Mentally rehearsing calm, confident leadership, because the brain processes imagined experiences similar to real ones, meaning that visualizing composure, clarity and positive outcomes strengthens the same neural pathways that are used in actual stressful situations. So how do I apply it? Future pacing. Picture yourself navigating a high pressure situation with confidence and control before it happens. Use an anchoring technique. You can recall a previous moment of strength and success, immersing yourself in the emotions and physical sensations of that experience. And the application, you can use it before maybe public speaking or a negotiation, or if you've got a very difficult decision making scenario to make under pressure. The outcome, it'll train your brain to default to calm, controlled responses rather than stress-driven reactivity. And thirdly, cognitive restructuring, where we rewire automatic stress responses, because stress is often magnified by negative thought patterns, catastrophizing, overgeneralizing, or focusing on worst case scenarios. Whereas cognitive restructuring helps leaders shift these mental habits, replacing emotional reactivity with strategic, solution-oriented thinking. But how do you apply it? Well, catch and challenge. Identify automatic negative thoughts, such as this is going to go terribly, and replace them with realistic, empowering alternatives like, I've handled challenges like this before, I'll navigate this so easily. Reframing pressure as a performance enhancer. So instead of this is overwhelming, reframe it to this is an opportunity to lead effectively under pressure and show what I'm capable of. And to apply it, use it during moments of self-doubt or high pressure decision making, or when the stress actually feels paralyzing. And the outcome is it will strengthen the prefrontal cortex ability to override fear-based responses, and it will enhance rational strategic thinking under stress. Final thought, the power of emotional mastery in leadership is where great leaders don't just manage stress, they master their emotional responses by possibly integrating controlled breathing, visualization and cognitive restructuring. Executives can regulate emotions in real time, they can prevent burnout, and they can lead with resilience, confidence and clarity. And some more strategies now, just as a solution for you guys: building resilience through habits, hardwiring leadership endurance. So resilience isn't built in a single moment, it's reinforced through daily habits that strengthen your mental endurance, your emotional stability, your cognitive agility. Just as chronic stress reshapes the brain for exhaustion, intentional recovery practices rewire it for clarity, focus, and long-term performance. But here's the key: resilience isn't about waiting for stress to to subside. It's about proactively conditioning your mind to handle it better. So let's explore some powerful resilience building habits that create sustainable leadership energy. Firstly, micro recovery techniques, preventing energy depletion before it starts. High performers don't just push through. I've mentioned that. They recover strategically, even in the middle of very demanding days. And micro recovery techniques provide quick resets that prevent stress accumulation. They reduce decision fatigue and they maintain peak mental sharpness. And to apply it, think about a 90-second reset where you step away from work every 90 minutes for a brief mental recharge of maybe 90 seconds. Bit of deep breathing, bit of stretching, or stepping outside. It's a conscious effort to step away. Active pauses, swap out scrolling on Facebook or inbox checking with a 3-minute movement break or focused breathing exercise. And you can use any time between back-to-back meetings, before the high pressure conversations, or when mental fatigue sets in. The outcome is that it will prevent cognitive exhaustion. It will keep your energy levels high and sustainable throughout the day. Second technique here, gratitude journaling. Rewiring the brain for optimism and perspective, because leaders often operate in problem-solving mode. They're constantly scanning for risks, challenges and inefficiencies, which is, while this is essential for strategic thinking, it can also wire the brain towards negativity, towards chronic stress. Whereas gratitude journaling counteracts the effect. It rewires neural pathways for resilience, for optimism, for emotional balance. And how do I apply it? Well, write down 3 good things exercise. Each morning or evening, just lists 3 things you're grateful for. Small wins, leadership insights, personal moments of joy. Think of future gratitude. Write about a challenge you're currently facing as if you've already overcome it. Act as if it's succeeded. It reinforces a problem-solving mindset. And you can apply by incorporating it into your morning or your evening routine to shift your focus away from stresses to strengths. The outcome is that it will strengthen emotional resilience, it will reduce your stress reactivity, and it increases your mental agility in high pressure situations. And thirdly, mind wandering sessions, unlocking creativity and big picture thinking, because many leaders believe that more focus equals better performance. But hyperfocus can actually restrict cognitive flexibility. Mind-wandering sessions give the brain space to process complex information, to enhance problem-solving skills, and to tap into deeper creativity. And you can apply it by strategic downtimes. Set aside 10 minutes daily for unstructured thinking. Step away from tasks, take a walk, or engage in a non-work activity. You can shower thoughts principle. You can use this technique where you capture spontaneous insights by just allowing your mind to wander freely before tackling big decisions. And you can apply it before high-stakes strategy meetings, brainstormings, board meetings, or when you just feel mentally blocked. And the outcome is that it enhances strategic thinking, increases your innovative problem solving, and it reduces stress-induced tunnel vision. So if you integrate these habits, you can use the power of habit stacking, which is resilience building habits work best when they're seamlessly integrated into your daily routines. That makes sense. And habit stacking is the practice of pairing a new habit with an existing established one, making it effortless to maintain. And examples of habit stacking for leadership resilience could be you pair a micro recovery break with scheduled meetings, and you reset it after each call. Okay, you attach one habit to the other. You can journal gratitude while you're drinking your morning coffee. You can anchor your optimism into the start of the day, and you can engage in mind wandering during daily commutes or workouts. You maximize your strategic thinking time, and the outcome is that it makes resilience a natural part of leadership rather than another task on the to-do list. And a final thought here, remember, resilience isn't just a trait, it's a trained skill. And by embedding micro recovery or gratitude journaling or mind wandering into your daily routine through habit stacking, it will create better mental durability, emotional agility, and sustainable energy. Okay, so we've now covered quite an extensive approach to stress, burnout, and how to perform under pressure. And there are some neuropsychological solutions, and there's many more. But as a final few minutes, we'd like to introduce our golden nugget. It's our unique coaching and support USP. It's what sets this approach apart. It's the combination of laser coaching and AI-powered support. It's designed specifically for you, senior leaders, senior managers. And as you can understand, we are all unique individuals and leaders of some degree. So add to that the knowledge needed to address the brain, the mind, and the body difficulties, and you can understand and see that to apply a specific set of strategies to your problems in the correct sequence and in the correct amount is a challenge for any busy leader. So stay with us just a little while longer and understand how we can help you quickly and confidentially, because we deliver unlimited laser coaching. So unlike traditional coaching that can take weeks to identify the root cause of burnout, laser coaching zeroes in on the most pressing challenges in just 20 minutes a session. And that will definitely suit your busy lifestyle. This is proven and tested. And these hyper-focused sessions are tailored to deliver actionable solutions quickly by highly skilled performance coaches, respecting the demands upon your time and the motivational support of approaching this problem quickly and skillfully together. So available as an on-demand online video or phone meeting. It can be by chat, it can be by text, to set the next action step and the goal to your challenge, moving you from your initial needs analysis to successful conclusion. And these laser coaching meetings are supported by AI-powered support for convenient 24/7 guidance. What do I mean by that? Well, imagine having a performance coach in your pocket. It's available around the clock, every hour, every day. Our AI-powered chatbot provides personalized strategies tailored to your unique stresses. It's got real-time exercises to help you regain focus and composure quickly. It's got accountability tools to ensure that you stay on track with your recovery and your resilience goals. And why does this work? Well, think of it as having a coach on demand, ready to provide personalized guidance whenever stress, pressure, or burnout strikes. And a story example here is of one executive used our chatbot to tackle and track their pre-meeting anxiety by running a quick breathing exercise. He described it as a moment of calm that changed the entire tone of the meeting. And this chatbot coach is highly trained by us. We train the LLM to be as skillful as we are. It's trained by us with our skills and our knowledge set. And it's a pretty powerful and unique combination. So that's enough of the sell. We always get asked after a session, is there a quick win strategy that I can take away? And there's a quick win. I mentioned it earlier, but I want to share a technique called box breathing. It's where you can use something you can use immediately to regain control in those moments of extreme high stress and pressure. And here's how it works. You just stop for a moment, try to clear your mind, inhale through your nose for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You then hold your breath for another count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You then slowly exhale now through your mouth for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you hold and wait before the next breath again for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you repeat this cycle 4 or 5 times, which is going to take you, it's not even going to take you 3 minutes. This technique activates your parasympathetic nervous system. It's your rest and digest, your feed and breathe system, calming your body and mind in under 2 or 3 minutes. It's a tool you can use anywhere, before a big meeting, during a challenging conversation, or even to help you unwind at the end of the day. And why is it effective? It's because box breathing not only reduces stress, but it also improves focus and clarity by regulating your oxygen flow to the brain. It's a small, but it's a powerful step towards reclaiming your composure in any challenging situation. And a final roundup now and the path forward. Here's what you've learned today. The hidden traps that keep leaders stuck in the burnout cycle. The neuroscience behind why burnout happens and how to reverse it. You've learned why leadership burnout is different, why it demands a unique approach. But as I said during the presentation, this is just the beginning. Imagine what you could achieve if you broke free from burnout. Imagine leading with clarity, energy and purpose once again. So a closing story we mentioned earlier will leave you with Sarah's story. After implementing the strategies we developed together, she not only recovered from burnout, but she also transformed her leadership style. Her team noticed, her performance soared, and she's now more confident and energized than ever. And what's more, her organisation began seeing higher engagement scores across the board because this renewed clarity inspired her team. This transformation isn't just for Sarah, it's possible for you too. So if you're ready to reclaim your leadership edge, let's talk about our next limited intake of clients. Whether through personalised coaching or our AI integrated approach, we'll find the solution that works for you. We ensure that you are stress and burnout free if you follow our guidance and help you develop mental toughness, strength, and to build resilience on a forward moving path. So thank you for your time. I look forward to discussing any of these points with you or your company and welcome you as clients very soon. Thank you.